Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Cornwall Freemasons Lodge in the Lounge sessions. I'm Simon Taylor, the Provincial Membership Officer for Cornwall, and I'm delighted to welcome for the first of two discussions our Deputy Provincial Grand Master, Roger Cargee. Roger, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. We have got a couple of questions for you that have been submitted by our members, but before we get into those, could you perhaps start by telling us a bit about your role as Deputy Provincial Grand Master?
Well, thank you, Simon, and thank you very much for inviting me to take part. It's my pleasure to be here. Well, as the Deputy Provincial Grand Master, I clearly stand in for the Provincial Grand Master at events or meetings where perhaps he's not able to attend. Part of my duties is to attend the Deputies' Mess, which is held in London once a year, where all the Deputy PGMs from the different provinces get together for an evening, which is quite informative and a very friendly occasion. There's also training seminars that take place in London, although clearly nothing's been happening in the last 12 months. Locally, I'm responsible for all disciplinary matters within the province, and I look after the VGOs, with the visiting grand officers, make sure that each lodge has got a VGO and keeping those lists up to date. And I arrange gatherings of grand officers. Again, hasn't happened in the last 12 months, but we do try and get together, perhaps over a lunch, and when we have discussions applicable to the province.
First question we've got from you actually comes from one of our younger members who asks, what is the Provincial Executive?
Well, the Provincial Executive is made up of two parts, really. There's what we call the Inner Executive, which consists of the Provincial Grand Master, his deputy, and his three assistant Provincial Grand Masters. And we meet as often as is required, perhaps a few times in a year. The Outer Executive, which consists of those same five, added to the Treasurer, Secretary, Registrar, Director of Ceremonies, the Almoner, Charity Steward, Orator, Mentor, Communication and Membership Officer. And we meet on a regular basis, COVID permitting, of course, 4 times a year, usually March, June, September, December.
Thank you, Roger. So the Provincial Executive, they undertake the management within the province at those various aspects.
Everything that goes on in the province goes through the Provincial Executive in some form or another, yes.
Brilliant, thank you. So our second question is slightly more personal to you, which was one of our members asked, how did you feel to be promoted to the rank of Assistant Provincial Grand Master and then subsequently to Deputy Provincial Grand Master?
Well, I have to say it was a very, very proud moment for me. At that time, I had been the Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly for 7 years. And when Peter George, our PGM at the time, was going to stand down, then I expected to stand down at the same time. But as we know, Steve Perm was appointed Provincial Grand Master, and on the first occasion, he said to me, I've got a role in mind for you. So, Assistant Provincial Grand Master. And I was absolutely delighted, and I was very proud to continue to serve him as Provincial Grand Master, but also to serve the Province of Cornwall, which I had done a number of years up to that point and was pleased to carry on for another few years. And then, of course, 4 years after that, he promoted me to be his deputy. Equally a very proud moment for me.
Thank you, Roger, and thanks again for taking time to speak to us on the first of our short bite-sized interviews. We'll look forward to catching up with you again for the next interview. Thank you all for watching. We'll be releasing another episode next week. In the meantime, stay safe.